Good evening. This is Stacy Moxley. I did my paper on Manifest Destiny. I looked at three major aspects of it: the origins of it, the impact of it, and how it changed in modern times. Um, Julius Pratt did a really good job with researching and coming up with the origins of Manifest Destiny. Of course, through his research, it's pretty well assumed that John O'Sullivan was the first person that ever used the term Manifest Destiny. It started coming about in July, August, December 1845 in looking at the annexation of Texas and, of course, looking at pushing Great Britain out of Oregon. And in both instances, O'Sullivan used the comment that it was our God-given right to occupy the land. It was our manifest destiny to occupy the land with no other foreign countries involved. The next thing I looked at was O'Sullivan's meaning of manifest destiny. And O'Sullivan has kind of an interesting look on democracy itself. Um, he thinks of democracy more as a faith than a political ideology. According to O'Sullivan, manifest destiny really ends up with a twofold meaning. He first meaning is that, of course, it's our divine right to occupy all the land in America. Initially, this was only the continental America, but then he expanded it to Canada, Mexico, the Caribbean. His second meaning was that the United States was obligated to spread democracy. And his ideas about this come from, again, this divine right. His ideas that democracy was more of a faith, more of religion for him. He considered the United States a sinless entity because we fought tyranny to set up democracy. And as long as we were pushing democracy, then we maintained that sinless entity. So as long as the United States was promoting democracy, we were in a state of grace, so to speak. So that was kind of his idea. And not all people really agreed with this idea of manifest destiny. Burge is someone who researched political cartoons, and his comment is if you really support something, you're not going to poke fun of it, you're not going to make jokes about it. And what he found that a lot of people were making jokes about manifest destiny. There were a couple of caricatures that developed the idea, or the caricature of the robber, the thief, and of course what followed was the gallows. What way do you punish a thief but you hang him? So you get these images starting to come up because a lot of people did look at manifest destiny as nothing but the United States robbing Native Americans or Great Britain of their own land, the land that they owned. The next thing I looked at was the impact of manifest destiny. And of course, when you look at this, it's got to be broken down. The shortest group of people to look at were slaves. They were brought over into the colonies, into America from Africa as slaves. And as such, O'Sullivan didn't think they had any part in democracy because they were slaves. There was no chance of freedom, and therefore manifest destiny did not apply to them. And his definition here feeds back into his idea of who can participate in democracy. You have to be a people who can self-legislate, can self-govern. And according to O'Sullivan, only Anglo-Saxons seem to have that ability, which totally negates the slaves' ability because of their state of slavery. The next group was looking at Mexicans. And again, O'Sullivan didn't have a really high opinion of them. He looked at them as semi-barbarous, substantially below our national average in both purity and intelligence. If we were to take over Mexico, he thought that we would have to rule it tyrannically, which would violate our own sinless state, and that wasn't what we needed to do. So we could push democracy down there, but we couldn't allow these people to become citizens of the United States. We would have to go in and control for about 100 years before they would be ready, according to O'Sullivan. The last group I looked at, of course, is the main group of people in this country that were impacted by manifest destiny, that's Native Americans. O'Sullivan looked at Leviticus and said that savages were addicted to the most heinous acts of wickedness. And since they were wicked, they did not fall under that self-legislation image that he had. Therefore, they were kind of non-entities. They didn't need to be regarded when their land was taken. They could be pushed off, which of course supported the Indian Removal Acts and then every treaty that the United States broke with every Indian nation in this country. Um, because of his views in pushing those. Um, Matthew Bagel is a art historian, and he really looks at the art coming out of this time period to show how art gives us a visual of promoting that image of Native Americans. If you go back and look at some of these paintings, um, the Native American is always looked as the aggressor. And of course, the reality is the exact opposite. The whites were the aggressors. They were going on the natives' lands. They were taking it. They were pushing them off. They were killing them. And the natives, of course, were doing what anybody else would do in that situation, is defending it. But again, the art shows how it fed into this idea that natives could not self-legislate, which is, they could. But so Native Americans really are the biggest group that lost everything with this. The next thing I looked at was the impact on Manifest Destiny on slavery. Not the slave itself, but slavery as the institution. Slavery was looked at, from the Constitution between the North and South as keeping this balance of power. And they held this balance of power right up until we started acquiring more land. The South looked at it as a way to push their manifest destiny to move slavery into the other states, and of course they would gain more power. The North looked at it as a way to stop slavery, push it only into the southern states, and then eventually to get rid of it altogether. Major Wilson defines the southern states' apprehension as they were looked at as a concern of self-defense. They were trying to maintain that balance of power. And it became a political issue. The Whigs, of course, were more anti-slavery, the Democrats pro-slavery. The Democrats were in power, and that's where it went. The next thing I looked at was how Manifest Destiny changed with more modern meanings. We've got current presidents, Bush and Obama, who are still using this Manifest Destiny language in modern speeches. But President Bush said, liberty is a prize. It's not America's gift, it's God's gift. Obama went on and said it's our responsibility to spread Manifest Destiny. So this is definitely a concept that has gone from 1845 to the 2000s.